Grading Reforms in Secondary Education, Andrew Perry, SED 553, Stakeholder Presentation. Issues with grading policy. Grading policies are in need of a change in secondary education. Some of the questions that grading reform touches on is the validity of traditional grading system and how we as educators apply grades. One such example of a practice that is in need of reform at the application level is illustrated in the article, The Case Against Zero. Douglas R. Reeves urges that educators not use zero when grading, because assigning zero creates a deficit that students have a difficult time turning around. We're all familiar with the A through F, 100 through 0 percentage to letter grading system. Now, as you can see, each letter is assigned 10 points with exception to the F. The F creates 60 points. And as we all know, moving a zero up to a passing grade requires several good grades. How do we make grading meaningful? For instance, in my experience, daily grades are not a good indicator of progress. Instead, daily grades are a combination of behavioral influence and arbitrary judgment of how well a student is performing for that particular day. Once that data is collected, how is it even applied, or is it applicable? In other words, how do we transform grading from an arbitrary act into a meaningful act that measures mastery? The next thing I had to do was identify stakeholders that I would like to involve in decision making. In order to identify stakeholders involved in the grading process, I used a ground-up approach. Some of the questions in identifying them were, who does grading policy affect more directly? Who is doing the grading? Who understands the importance of curriculum? And who can reach the campus, or even the district? The first stakeholders that I included were students. In the latter bottom-up approach to inclusion for stakeholder purposes, students are at the bottom. Although an argument can be made as to the validity of the inclusion of students as stakeholders, I feel they can provide vital insight. They can provide experiential information about different grading practices that have been applied to them. Students can identify practices that they liked, as well as practices that they felt were unfair. Parents, similar to students, are also involved in the world of academia alongside students. The inclusion of parents provide information about practices in grading that they also felt were fair or unfair. The other rationale for including parents in the stakeholders pool is to decrease friction that occurs when parents are left out of the decision-making process. The next stakeholders that I identified were teachers. Teachers are the ones who not only apply grades, but create a particular system within a system for grading. They design rubrics, create tests, and attempt to compile data into something meaningful and useful. Teachers who teach different areas of curriculum should be included. The rationale behind that is different teachers use different methods to assess as well as grade students. Math teachers will not be assessing students in the same way that an art teacher might. Another stakeholder that I identified were principals. The principal is the final word at the school. The principal is in charge of a majority of administrative roles at the school and is the heart of the campus for a secondary school. I included the principal in the pool of stakeholders for several reasons. First is, in order to conduct a survey, the principal must give consent. Also, the principal is first and foremost an educator. He or she is an invaluable resource of educational knowledge and experience. Finally, the principal can reduce the friction when introducing these ideas at the campus level. The last stakeholder that I identified was the superintendent. This is the administrative head of the entire district organization. In Northside Independent School District, the superintendent oversees many different campuses, which means that he has a very long reach and can influence many campuses. Including the superintendent in grading policy allows for greater change. For instance, principals might be able to influence grading policy changes within the campus, but not change the structure of grading. However, the superintendent might be able to do that. This can include the number of grades that need to be taken within a 6-week period for students, or the structure of grading itself. In order to utilize our stakeholders and gathering data, a 2-part plan will be implemented in gathering data for the purpose of grading reformation. First, I would like to impose a survey. A campus-wide survey should be administered to students and parents. The use of the survey allows for campus administrators to ask a variety of specific questions and receive a large amount of feedback from both parents and students. Once the information is collected from students and parents, it should be entered into a database and charted graphically. The second thing is, once the information has been dissected and charted graphically, a campus-wide meeting should take place, which include administration on campus as well as all teachers. During this meeting, information from the results of the survey can be presented, and dialogue that is led by the principal should occur about grading practices and structure. Direct input is collected from teachers and synthesized into usable information that should be shared across the campus along with findings from the survey. Findings from the survey should be then sent to the superintendent for inspection. Once the information has been analyzed and synthesized, findings are ready to be distributed to the stakeholders. The first thing that needs to happen is information about the findings of the campus meeting and the survey should be posted on the district website. In Northside, a large amount of information is placed on the website for parents and students to digest. Similarly, the same information should be made in print and in the campus-wide periodical for parents who may not have access to the internet. Once the information has been gathered, a presentation should be created to present to the faculty at the next staff development day. These are some of the things that need to be included: results of the survey to both students and parents, key points addressed at the district-wide meeting, and steps that have been considered for policy reform. If these steps are taken, I feel that grading policy can be remedied.